The unthinkable warship emerges. In the year 2150, humanity was at war. For decades, the Earth had fought off alien invaders from the Andromeda galaxy. These alien empires were ruthless, armed with fleets of warships so advanced that no human technology could match them. The war had seemed endless. Each time humanity made a small gain, the aliens would strike back harder. The people of Earth were losing hope. The United Earth Defense Fleet, the last hope for the human race, was in shambles. After the alien empire known as the Shashra attacked Earth's outer colonies, the surviving fleet gathered in deep space, far from Earth. Their ships were battered, and their morale shattered. They had no new weapons, no new strategies, and no way to face the next wave of attacks. Then, in the midst of this bleak situation, something unexpected happened. A signal was received. It came from an unknown source, deep within the Andromeda galaxy. At first, the Earth fleet assumed it was a trap, a trick by the aliens to lure them into a fight they couldn't win. But the signal was unlike anything they had encountered. It was a distress call, yes, but also a beacon of hope. Something about it felt different. It felt human. The fleet's commanders debated what to do. Most were in favor of ignoring the signal, fearing it was some kind of trick. But the few who held on to hope, the ones who refused to give up, decided to investigate. They sent a small scout ship to trace the signal's origin. The journey was long, and the crew of the scout ship couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. But when they finally arrived at the source of the signal, what they found was beyond their wildest expectations. There, floating in the darkness of space, was a warship. But not just any warship. This ship was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It was massive, far larger than any human vessel, yet it was strangely elegant. Its sleek, angular design seemed to defy the laws of physics. The hull shimmered with an otherworldly glow, and strange symbols covered its surface, symbols that no one on Earth could recognize. The ship looked ancient, yet it was clearly in perfect condition, as though it had just been built. There was no sign of wear or damage, despite the fact that it had likely been in space for centuries, if not longer. The scout ship approached cautiously, sending a transmission to the warship. There was no response. The crew of the scout ship exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether they should approach any closer. But then, without warning, the warship's massive engines powered on. A deep rumble echoed through space as the warship's engines came to life. The scout ship's sensors went wild as they registered an energy signature that was beyond anything they had ever seen. For a moment, the scout ship's crew thought they had made a terrible mistake. Could this be a trap? Was this some alien weapon, ready to turn its deadly firepower on them? But then, the warship did something that shocked everyone. It began to move. It didn't just drift aimlessly like most ships in space. No, this warship moved with purpose. Its engines roared to life with unimaginable power, propelling it forward faster than anything the scout ship had ever seen. It was heading straight toward the human fleet. The scout ship frantically tried to send a warning, but the warship's movements were too quick. Within moments, it had reached the human fleet's location, and just as quickly, it stopped. The entire fleet was left in stunned silence as the warship hovered just above them. The crew of the scout ship could only watch in awe as the massive ship loomed over them. Its strange glow illuminated the darkness of space, casting eerie shadows over the other ships. For a moment, no one knew what to do. The human fleet's commanders ordered all ships to prepare for battle. They had no idea what this warship was or who had sent it, but they knew one thing. It was either a weapon, or it was the key to humanity's survival. The human fleet's flagship, the Eternal Hope, was the first to make contact. The captain, Captain Ariana Mitchell, ordered her crew to open a channel to the unknown warship. The message they sent was simple. Who are you? What is your purpose? At first, there was nothing. Then, after what seemed like an eternity, the warship responded. The message was brief but clear. "We are your salvation." No one knew what to think. The message could mean anything. Was the warship an ally, or was it a trap set by the aliens? The crew of the Eternal Hope waited, holding their breath. And then something incredible happened. The warship began to deploy drones, small robotic ships that spread out around the fleet. These drones weren't just weapons. They were scanning, studying, and analyzing every ship in the human fleet. Captain Mitchell watched, her mind racing. Was this ship a weapon designed to destroy the enemy, or was it something far more complicated? And if it was a weapon, how could they possibly control it? The answer would come soon enough, but it would not be easy. The warship was a mystery, one that had defied every expectation. As the crew of the Eternal Hope braced themselves for whatever came next, they knew one thing for sure: this was not just another warship. This was something far beyond their understanding, something that could either save humanity or doom them all. The warship's purpose remained unclear, but it was clear that humanity's future had just taken an unexpected turn. And as the human fleet prepared to face the unknown, the warship stood silently, waiting for its next move. The first encounter. The next few days were filled with tension as the human fleet prepared for an uncertain future. The mysterious warship had not offered any further communication. It simply remained there, hovering above the fleet, its eerie glow lighting up the dark expanse of space. The silence was deafening. The entire fleet was on edge. Some soldiers believed the warship could be their salvation, while others feared it might be a weapon of destruction, far beyond their understanding. Captain Ariana Mitchell of the Eternal Hope was one of the few who remained calm. She had led her crew through many battles, but nothing had prepared her for this. She stood on the bridge of her ship, staring at the warship. It was unlike any human creation. It seemed alive, almost sentient, as if it was watching them. The feeling of being observed was unsettling. "We need to make a decision," said Commander Jason Wells, her second in command. "This can't go on. We need to figure out whether we can trust this ship or not." Captain Mitchell nodded, her eyes never leaving the massive warship. She had studied the data, analyzed the scans, and yet there was no clear answer. There were no signs of weapons, no signs of hostility, but something about it felt off. "Prepare the fleet for a controlled approach," she ordered. "We'll move closer cautiously. We need to know what we're dealing with." The fleet began to slowly move forward, each ship holding its position, waiting for the unknown. As the ships approached the warship, every crew member was on high alert. Their fingers hovered over weapon controls, their eyes trained on the ship. It felt like they were walking into the jaws of a beast, not knowing if it would bite or welcome them. For a long time, nothing happened. The warship simply remained still, as if waiting. But then, without warning, it moved. The ship's engines roared to life, and the immense vessel shifted, gliding forward with shocking speed. It didn't just move, it danced through space, weaving in and out with precision that no human ship could ever match. It felt as if the warship was toying with them, testing their reactions. The human fleet halted, watching in awe. The movement of the warship was so graceful, so flawless, that it left them speechless. What kind of technology could do that? How could something so massive move like it was weightless, like it had no constraints? Even the fastest human ships would struggle to keep up. "We should get out of here, Captain," said Lieutenant Sarah Kane, her voice tinged with fear. "This is insane. We're sitting ducks." But Captain Mitchell wasn't ready to back down. "No," she replied firmly. "We need to learn. If this ship is here to help, we need to understand it. Stay calm." The fleet held its position as the warship continued its erratic movements, sometimes speeding up, other times halting abruptly in mid-space. The sheer energy it radiated seemed to disrupt the surrounding space. It was as though the laws of physics themselves bent and twisted around the ship. Every human on board the fleet's ships could feel it. The gravitational pull, the strange vibrations, the sense of displacement. It was as if the very fabric of reality was warping around this behemoth. Captain Mitchell watched the display on her screen as the warship's sensors locked onto the Eternal Hope. Her eyes widened in surprise as the ship's systems began to react in ways that couldn't be explained. The readings were unlike anything she had ever seen. Energy signatures that fluctuated, particles moving in strange patterns. It was almost as if the ship had a mind of its own, analyzing the fleet's ships, testing their weaknesses. "Are we being scanned?" asked Commander Wells, his voice tight with worry. "It seems so," Mitchell replied, not taking her eyes off the monitor. "But this isn't like any scan we've encountered. It's different." The tension on the bridge grew heavier as the warship's strange activity continued. For a brief moment, the fleet thought it might attack, that it was gathering data to strike. But then, instead of unleashing destructive firepower, the warship slowed to a stop. The eerie silence returned, broken only by the hum of the fleet's engines. The ships held their breath, waiting for the next move. Suddenly, the warship released a series of small drones, dozens of them, each one darting into space with blinding speed. They scattered in every direction, weaving through the fleet with unbelievable agility. The drones were too fast, too precise for any human ship to follow. "We need to track them," Mitchell ordered, gripping the armrests of her command chair, prepared to engage with drones. The drones, however, didn't seem hostile. They weren't firing weapons, nor were they charging at the human fleet. Instead, they moved in patterns, as if performing a complex, coordinated dance. They surrounded the human ships, studying them, analyzing them. For a moment, it seemed as though the warship was performing some kind of test, as if it were gauging the readiness of the fleet. But the question lingered. Was this a friendly gesture, or was it a prelude to something far worse? The drones continued their dance, moving in and out of the fleet, scanning each ship. The entire fleet held its breath. No one knew what to expect. Were the drones scanning for weaknesses, gathering information to use against them? Or were they preparing something far more complicated? Captain Mitchell's mind raced. If this warship was an ally, then the fate of humanity rested on their ability to understand it. But if it was a threat, they would be outmatched, outclassed. The next few moments could change everything. The drones finally slowed and began to return to the warship. One by one, they docked with the ship, disappearing inside. The warship, now completely still once again, was watching. It had gathered its data, but what would it do with it? The fleet was on edge. Captain Mitchell had a sinking feeling that this encounter was just the beginning of something much larger, something that humanity was not prepared for. As the fleet waited in silence, one thing was certain. The warship's true intentions were still a mystery, but one thing was clear. It was not here to destroy them. Not yet, anyway. The mystery deepens. For days after the strange encounter, the human fleet remained in position, orbiting around the massive warship. There was no sign of attack, no hostile movements. The warship remained eerily silent, its engines idle, its strange glow lighting up the dark emptiness of space. It was almost as if the ship had retreated into itself, waiting, watching. Captain Ariana Mitchell sat in her quarters, staring at a holographic map of the surrounding star system. The unknown warship loomed large in her mind. They had seen its power, witnessed its strange capabilities, but no one on the fleet understood what it truly was. It didn't behave like any ship they had encountered, human or alien. It defied logic, defied reason. "Captain," came the voice of Commander Jason Wells, breaking her thoughts. "We've been analyzing the data collected from the drones, and there's something strange." Mitchell looked up, intrigued. "What do you mean, strange?" Wells hesitated, his face serious. The drones weren't just scanning the ships. They were collecting something else. Something biological. Mitchell frowned. "Biological? Are you saying the warship is harvesting samples?" "Not exactly," Wells replied. "It's more like they were studying the life forms on board the ships. I know it sounds crazy, but the data suggests the warship is somehow analyzing the human crew. It's as if it's looking for something in us. The captain's stomach tightened. If this was true, it meant the warship wasn't just interested in technology or military strategy. It was studying them as people, as humans. Is it possible it's not just a ship? Mitchell asked. Could it be something more? Wells didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned back to his console and began inputting data. There's another thing. The warship's energy levels aren't stable. They fluctuate, almost like it's alive. Breathing, for lack of a better word. We can't figure out why. And the way it moves, the way it interacts with space, it's as if it's connected to something greater, something beyond our understanding. Captain Mitchell leaned back in her chair, trying to piece everything together. The warship wasn't like anything humanity had ever encountered. It wasn't just a ship, it was something else, something powerful, something ancient. The crew of the Eternal Hope wasn't the only one feeling this sense of dread. Across the entire fleet, whispers of fear spread. The soldiers, the engineers, even the scientists, they were all beginning to wonder whether they were dealing with an ally or something much darker. Some began to doubt that this warship could be trusted. A few days passed, and the fleet's scientists worked around the clock, analyzing the ship's energy output, its strange signals, and its behaviors. But the more they studied, the more questions arose. They found no clear answer to the warship's origin. No records, no signs of an ancient alien civilization. It was as if the ship had simply appeared out of nowhere, fully formed and functional. Late one night, as Captain Mitchell stood on the bridge, gazing out into the void of space, an alarming message flashed across the console. It was a transmission from an unknown source, an encrypted signal that couldn't be traced. The transmission was brief, a simple phrase, but it chilled Mitchell to her core. It read, "We are not alone." The words lingered in the air, the silence on the bridge thickening as the crew digested the meaning. Who had sent that message, and what did it mean? Was it from the warship itself, or from another source? Mitchell stood frozen, unsure how to respond. The warship, silent as ever, continued to loom in space, its glowing lights casting long shadows on the Eternal Hope. The feeling of being watched only grew stronger. It was as though the ship was waiting for something to happen. It was waiting for them to make the first move. The mystery deepened with every passing hour. The warship's behavior had become more erratic, more unpredictable. It seemed to respond to the humans' movements, adapting to every action they took. Every time the fleet moved, the warship adjusted its position, as if it could sense their intentions before they even made them. It was as though it could read their minds. A strange feeling of helplessness swept through Captain Mitchell. She had fought countless battles, led her crew through war and chaos, but this was different. She was no longer sure who, or what, she was dealing with. The warship wasn't just another alien threat. It was something far more complex. In the darkness of space, the crew of the Eternal Hope was left with a single, terrifying question. What does the warship want with them? What was it waiting for? What was it studying? And most importantly, what would happen when it finally decided to reveal its true purpose? Captain Mitchell knew one thing for certain. The warship had not come to Earth just to watch. It had a plan that would soon unfold, and they would have no choice but to face it. The mystery of the warship was far from over, and with every passing moment, it seemed more and more likely that humanity had stumbled upon something that would change the course of their future forever. Alien forces fight back. It had been days since the mysterious warship had first appeared, and the crew of the Eternal Hope still didn't know what to make of it. The warship's strange behavior continued. Erratic movements, unsettling silence, and mysterious transmissions that hinted at some greater purpose. Every day, the tension grew. Was it a friend? Or was it just waiting for the right moment to turn against them? Then, the worst possible news arrived. The alien fleet, the Shashra Empire, had returned. They had come faster than expected, appearing without warning at the edge of the solar system. It was clear the enemy had not been idle while humanity had been distracted by the warship. The Shashra ships were enormous, their weapons designed to obliterate entire fleets with ease. They had wiped out human colonies before, and their ruthless, war-hungry ways had no mercy. The fleet of the Shashra Empire had found its mark. It was headed straight for Earth. For Captain Mitchell and a crew of the Eternal Hope, it was a crushing blow. After months of fighting, surviving, and hoping, the human fleet was once again facing certain defeat. The ships were battered, the crew exhausted. And there was still the question of the mysterious warship. What side was it on? Could humanity really trust it, or was it simply another tool to be used by the enemy? The human fleet scrambled to prepare for battle, sending out distress signals to Earth. But there was little time. The Shashra fleet was already closing in. As the alien ships began to swarm through the void, Captain Mitchell ordered all ships to take defensive positions. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. The human fleet's weapons powered up, ready for what was sure to be a deadly clash. Then, to everyone's shock, the warship moved. It was not a simple maneuver this time. The warship activated its engines with a roar that reverberated through space, faster than anything the human fleet had ever seen. It cut through the darkness, a blinding light streaking across the void as it positioned itself directly between the oncoming Shashra ships and the human fleet. The Eternal Hope's crew watched in stunned silence as the warship moved into battle. The Shashra, clearly caught off guard by this unknown ship, hesitated for a moment. But only for a moment. Within seconds, the alien fleet unleashed its deadly firepower. Laser beams, energy bolts, and missiles erupted from the Shashra ships, all aimed at the warship. The warship responded in a way no one expected. Instead of retreating, the warship began to move with a fluidity that defied the laws of physics. It dodged every attack with ease, almost as if it was dancing through space. It weaved and twisted, its massive form appearing to vanish and reappear in different locations, faster than the eye could follow. The Shashra ships fired again and again, but each shot missed, as if the warship could anticipate their every move. Captain Mitchell watched, her breath catching in her throat. The warship wasn't just evading the enemy, it was engaging them. It fired back, but not with the usual human weapons. Instead, the warship unleashed an energy burst so powerful, it sent shockwaves through space. The energy beam cut through the Shashra ships like a hot knife through butter. The alien vessels, once thought invincible, were torn apart in seconds. "What is happening?" Commander Wells whispered in disbelief. The human fleet watched in awe as the warship tore through the Shashra forces. The alien ships, despite their overwhelming numbers, didn't stand a chance against this impossible force. The warship seemed to be targeting the critical systems of each ship with surgical precision, taking out engines, weapons, and shields in one blast. It was over faster than anyone could process. The entire Shashra fleet had been decimated, reduced to floating debris. Only a few scattered survivors managed to escape, fleeing into the depths of space. The warship, once again, hovered above the human fleet, its glow dimming to a soft pulse. Captain Mitchell and her crew stared at the remains of the alien fleet. The battle was won, but not because of anything humanity had done. It was because of the warship. And yet, despite the victory, a nagging question remained. Why? Why had the warship done this? It had shown immense power, enough to annihilate an entire fleet in moments. But what did it want in return? The fleet's communications officers scrambled to send a message to the warship, hoping for some sort of explanation. But there was no response. The warship remained silent, its glow pulsating faintly in the dark. Was it waiting for something? Or had it already decided humanity was no longer a threat? As the silence stretched on, Captain Mitchell's mind raced. Had the warship acted on its own, or had it been waiting for the Shashra to make their move? Had it been studying humanity all along, using the alien threat as a way to test the human race? Or was this a sign that the warship had chosen humanity as its allies, using its power to ensure their survival? It was clear that the warship had immense capabilities, far beyond human comprehension. The crew of the Eternal Hope now had more questions than ever before, and with the alien threat seemingly neutralized, they couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. What would happen next? And what would be the true cost of this victory? As Captain Mitchell looked out into the empty space, she realized one thing was certain. The warship had just saved humanity, but it hadn't answered any of the questions that loomed over their future. And until those questions were answered, the crew of the Eternal Hope would remain on edge, uncertain of what lay ahead. A forbidden secret. The victory over the Shashra fleet was celebrated, but the relief was short-lived. Even as the human fleet returned to formation, the sense of unease remained. The warship had obliterated the alien invaders with such overwhelming power, yet it remained an enigma. No one knew what it truly was or why it had chosen to intervene. Its silence after the battle only deepened the mystery, leaving humanity with more questions than answers. Captain Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Eternal Hope, staring out into the cold emptiness of space. The warship still loomed in the distance, its faint pulse of light a constant reminder of the strange, otherworldly power it possessed. It had saved them, yes, but at what cost? What if this was all part of something much bigger? Something they couldn't even begin to understand. Mitchell had spent countless hours with her crew, poring over every scrap of data they had gathered on the warship. They had analyzed its weapon systems, its energy signatures, and even its movements, but there was one thing they couldn't explain. The warship itself. Its origins remained a complete mystery. "This doesn't make sense," Commander Wells said, interrupting her thoughts. He was seated at the command table, his face bathed in the glow of a holographic display. "We've been over every possible piece of data. There's nothing in our records that matches anything about this ship. It's not human, and it's not Shashra. But if it's an alien ship, then why hasn't it communicated with us directly?" Mitchell turned to face him. "I've been wondering the same thing. It doesn't make any sense. Why would it intervene and then just wait? We need answers. We can't keep flying blind like this." Just as Mitchell was about to issue new orders, a sharp ping echoed across the bridge. It was a transmission, one they hadn't been able to trace until now. It was encrypted, but there was something different about this one. This time, it was from the warship. The crew gathered quickly as Mitchell ordered the transmission to be played. The voice that came through the speaker was deep, calm, and almost mechanical, but there was something undeniably human about it. The words were clear but cryptic. "We are not what you think we are." The message ended abruptly, leaving the crew in stunned silence. The words echoed through Mitchell's mind as she stared at the screen. What did that mean? Was the warship somehow connected to humanity? Was it human? Her mind raced, searching for an explanation, but there were too many unanswered questions. The message had been short, but it was enough to push Mitchell and her crew into action. They needed to know more, and they needed to know now. The Eternal Hope set course for the warship, and for the first time since its arrival, they prepared to dock with it. This was a risky move. No one knew what kind of technology the warship possessed, or whether it was even safe to approach. But the captain had no other choice. The warship held the key to humanity's survival, and if they didn't understand it fully, they'd risk being at its mercy. The approach was tense. The warship's massive form loomed closer, and the crew could feel the strange energy surging around them. As they docked, the feeling of being watched intensified, and Mitchell could almost sense the ship's awareness of their every move. They had never felt this before, this eerie, overwhelming presence. Once docked, the crew disembarked, cautiously entering the warship's interior. What they found was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls seemed to pulse with a strange energy, and the air inside was thick, almost alive. It was as if the very ship was breathing, living in some strange, organic way. The deeper they ventured, The more they realized this was not a typical warship. There were no traditional consoles, no familiar ship systems. Instead, the ship seemed to be alive. The walls pulsed with a strange rhythm, and the atmosphere felt charged, as though the entire place was waiting for something. The crew walked in stunned silence, unsure of what to expect next. Mitchell stopped in front of a massive door, its surface covered in symbols they couldn't read. The symbols looked like a mix of alien writing and something more ancient, something human. She couldn't explain it, but the markings felt familiar, like they were speaking directly to her. The door slid open without a sound. Inside was a vast chamber. At the center stood an object. No, a figure. It was unlike anything Mitchell had ever seen. It was humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. Its form was shifting, almost liquid, constantly changing and reforming. It was like looking at a being that didn't belong to any one species, a being that was both alien and human. In the center of the chamber, a holographic display flickered to life, showing images of distant worlds and long-forgotten civilizations. One image caught Mitchell's eye. It was Earth, but not as she knew it. The Earth in the hologram was thriving, alive with technology and prosperity. The image shifted to show a massive warship, identical to the one now before her. The figure in the center of the room finally spoke. "We are the firstborn," it said, its voice resonating deeply, not just in their ears, but in their minds. "We are the creators of your kind, and the guardians of the galaxy." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Mitchell's heart raced as the truth began to unfold. The warship was not just a weapon. It was part of something much larger. It was not just an ally. It was a remnant of an ancient civilization that had shaped the very foundation of humanity. The warship had not come to fight the Shashra. It had come to protect the human race from an even greater threat. But why hadn't it revealed itself sooner? Why hadn't it contacted humanity before? What had it been waiting for? The firstborn's figure shimmered, almost as if it was fading from existence. The time is not yet right. The true enemy is still out there, waiting to strike. You will need the warship's power to defeat them, but first, you must unlock its true potential. Only then will you be ready. Captain Mitchell stood frozen, overwhelmed by the weight of the revelation. The warship, the mysterious alien presence, was not just a tool, it was a key to humanity's future. But there was so much they didn't understand. As the figure disappeared, the chamber fell silent. The crew of the Eternal Hope stood in shock, realizing that the warship had only just begun to reveal its true purpose. The warship wasn't just humanity's salvation. It was part of a much larger ancient story. And as they prepared to leave the chamber, Mitchell knew one thing for sure. The future of humanity had just become far more complicated and far more dangerous than she could ever have imagined. The ultimate test, the revelation that the warship was connected to humanity's creators, the firstborn, changed everything. The crew of the Eternal Hope was no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting to unlock a power far beyond their understanding. The warship had come to protect humanity, but there was still much they didn't know. The true enemy, the one that the firstborn had warned about, had not yet revealed itself. In the weeks that followed, the fleet continued to train, preparing for the unknown enemy. The warship, silent but ever-present, floated in space, a mysterious ally with the potential to save or destroy them all. Every crew member aboard the fleet now understood that the stakes were higher than ever before. Humanity was facing not just the Shashra or any alien empire. They were facing a force that could endanger the entire galaxy. Captain Mitchell was no longer certain how much time they had. The firstborn's words echoed in her mind. The true enemy is still out there, waiting to strike. But who was this enemy? What did they look like? And why hadn't the firstborn told them more? As the fleet made its way deeper into space, heading toward the unknown edge of the galaxy, strange things began to happen. The warship had become more active. Its energy signatures fluctuated in ways that had been impossible to predict. It seemed as though it was getting ready for something. The crew couldn't ignore the feeling that the warship was not just waiting, but preparing for the coming battle. Finally, the enemy arrived. The fleet's sensors detected a massive disturbance in space, something beyond the scope of any known alien race. The massive signature appeared suddenly, as though it had been lying in wait, hiding in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. It was a fleet of ships unlike anything the human race had ever seen. They were enormous, sleek, and exuded an aura of death. These ships were not just weapons. They were living things, their forms organic and shifting. "Commander, we've identified the fleet," said Lieutenant Kane, her voice shaking. "It's them, the ones the Firstborn warned us about. The Xenar." The name sent a chill down Mitchell's spine. The Xenar were an ancient race, a force so powerful that the Firstborn had locked them away, hidden in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. The Xenar had once been the masters of the stars, feared by every species. But now, after millennia of silence, they had returned. The Xenar ships moved with terrifying speed, cutting through space like shadows. Their energy signatures were unlike anything the fleet had ever encountered. The human fleet was helpless to stop them, their weapons no match for the sheer power of the enemy. And the warship, humanity's one hope, remained eerily still, as if waiting for something. "Prepare to engage," Captain Mitchell ordered, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her heart. "We can't just sit here. We have to fight." But the fleet was outclassed. The Xenar ships were too fast, too strong. The first wave of attacks tore through the human fleet, sending ships tumbling into space. No matter what the humans did, the Xenar's weapons seemed to absorb the energy and return it tenfold. The fleet's shields were no match for the Xenar's devastating strikes. "We need backup now," Commander Wells shouted, but even as he spoke, the human fleet was crumbling. Ship after ship was destroyed in a fiery blaze. In the middle of the chaos, the warship finally moved. It wasn't a dramatic show of force like before. Instead, it glided into battle, its movements calculated and precise. The warship's energy readings spiked, and then the unimaginable happened. A beam of pure energy, so powerful that it seemed to distort time and space itself, shot from the warship's core. But the Xenar were not easily defeated. They fought back, retaliating with a power that seemed to come from deep within their ships, from the very fabric of their existence. The warship, despite its immense power, struggled to keep up. For the first time, Mitchell saw something she never expected. The warship was struggling. It wasn't invincible. "We can't hold them off forever," said Lieutenant Kane, her eyes wide with fear. "The warship is taking too much damage. We need to do something." Captain Mitchell's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't lose the warship, not now. It was their only chance. She turned to the warship, trying to make contact, but there was no response. The ship's energy was fluctuating wildly, and its movements were growing erratic. It was as though the warship was fighting a battle inside itself. But it wasn't just the warship at risk. The entire human fleet was on the verge of collapse. Suddenly, something changed. The warship's engines flared to life in a brilliant burst of light. It moved faster, more precisely, than it ever had before. It wasn't just reacting to the Xenar's attacks. It was anticipating them. The warship had adapted. It had learned. The true potential of the ship was unlocked, and it became a force unlike anything Mitchell had ever seen. With a roar that shook space itself, the warship launched a final devastating attack. This time, it wasn't a beam of energy. It was a pulse of pure destruction, a wave of energy so powerful that it tore through the Xenar fleet in a single strike. The energy surged outward, obliterating the Xenar ships, and for the first time, the tide of battle began to turn. The remaining Xenar ships attempted to retreat, but they were too late. The warship, now fully awakened, chased them down, targeting their engines, cutting through their shields, and rendering them useless. Within moments, the Xenar fleet was no more. The warship's energy settled, and it hovered once again in the darkness, a quiet sentinel among the wreckage of the battle. The human fleet was left in shock. They had won, but it had come at a great cost. The warship had saved them, but it had also revealed just how much humanity still didn't understand about the force they had allied with. Captain Mitchell stood on the bridge, watching as the last remnants of the Xenar fleet disappeared into the void. "What just happened?" she whispered. The warship had passed its ultimate test. It had not just protected humanity. It had shown them the true power they had been entrusted with. But the mystery of the warship was far from over. What would come next? And what other secrets were still waiting to be uncovered? As the human fleet began the long journey back to Earth, one thing was certain. The warship was not just an ally. It was something far more powerful, far more ancient, and far more mysterious than anything they could have ever imagined. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun. A new era. The battle was over, and humanity had emerged victorious, thanks to the warship. But as Captain Mitchell and her crew watched the remnants of the Xenar fleet drift into the cold emptiness of space, they knew that this victory came at a price. The warship, powerful and ancient, had proven its worth, but what would be the consequences of having such a force in their hands? The crew of the Eternal Hope returned to Earth's orbit, their hearts heavy with questions. The warship had protected them, but it had also revealed the fragility of humanity's position in the galaxy. This victory wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was a reminder that there were forces out there far beyond their understanding, forces that could shape the future of the entire galaxy. As the fleet re-entered Earth's orbit, Captain Mitchell was called to a meeting with the highest-ranking members of the United Earth Council. The warship had done its job. Now it was time for humanity to figure out what came next. The warship, still hovering in space, was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. It was no longer just a weapon. It was an ancient relic, a remnant of the firstborn. And its presence alone sent a ripple through the political and military systems of Earth. How would humanity use it? Could they even control it? And perhaps most importantly, who else knew of its existence? The United Earth Council convened in an emergency session. The members gathered in a secure facility deep underground. The room was filled with tension. Everyone knew that the warship had changed everything. It had saved humanity, but at what cost? The questions were numerous, and the answers few. Captain Mitchell stood before the council, her face set in determination, but also marked by the exhaustion of months of war. She had been through countless battles, but nothing had prepared her for the weight of what was ahead. "We've been saved," Mitchell said, her voice steady as she addressed the council. "But we must understand that the warship, this power, is something humanity cannot fully comprehend yet. We have barely scratched the surface of what it can do. It may be an ally, but it's also a reminder that we are not alone in this galaxy, and that the forces watching us are far beyond anything we could imagine." Council members exchanged looks of concern. Mitchell could see the unease in their faces. There were those who were eager to harness the warship's power, to use it to secure humanity's future and extend Earth's dominance. Others were terrified, knowing that humanity was now connected to an ancient force whose true intentions remained unclear. "We cannot allow this warship to fall into the wrong hands," one council member, Admiral Lincoln, said with authority. "We need to ensure that we are the ones who control it. Humanity cannot afford to be at the mercy of the unknown." "Control is not the issue," Mitchell replied, her gaze unwavering. "The real question is, can we even control it? It's not just a ship, it's an artifact. An ancient weapon, yes, but also a piece of a much larger puzzle. And the puzzle isn't just about us. It's about everything." As the meeting continued, a debate raged. There were factions within the council. Some wanted to use the warship as humanity's ultimate weapon, while others argued that they didn't understand the full scope of the warship's capabilities and that it could become a danger if misused. Captain Mitchell left the council session feeling unsettled. She understood the stakes. The warship wasn't just humanity's salvation. It was a symbol of everything that was yet to come. The enemy they had just faced, the Xanar, was only the beginning. The warship had shown them a glimpse of what was out there, but there were still countless mysteries surrounding its origins and its true purpose. Back aboard the Eternal Hope, Mitchell sat in her quarters, staring at the stars through the observation window. Earth was below her, beautiful and fragile, and she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was now part of something much larger. They were no longer the top of the food chain. They were a small piece of a much grander, more complex universe. The warship had saved them, but was it a gift, or was it a warning? And how long would it take before other powers in the galaxy took notice? The crew was restless. Some were eager to return to Earth and rebuild. Others were anxious about what the future held. No one could predict what the warship's appearance would mean for humanity's place in the galaxy. Would they be seen as an ally to the Firstborn, or would they be caught in the crossfire of ancient conflicts that stretched back millennia? As the Eternal Hope drifted in orbit, awaiting orders, Captain Mitchell stood alone in the command center, looking out into the infinite void. The universe had just opened up to humanity, and the question now was, what would they do with the knowledge, the power, and the responsibility that the warship had handed them? "Captain," Commander Wells said as he entered the room, breaking her thoughts, "the Council has made their decision. We are to begin research on the warship, learn what we can. They want us to prepare for anything. They're calling this the dawn of a new era." Mitchell turned to face him, a tired smile crossing her face. "A new era, huh?" she mused. "I hope we're ready for it." Wells gave her a knowing look. No one's ever really ready for what comes next. Mitchell nodded, her gaze returning to the vastness of space. The warship, still in orbit, was now humanity's greatest ally and greatest unknown. She wasn't sure what the future would bring, but one thing was certain. The next chapter in humanity's story had only just begun. As the fleet prepared to embark on its next mission, Mitchell knew that the warship had not only changed their present, it had unlocked the future. What kind of future that would be, however, remained to be seen. The galaxy was full of unknowns, and humanity now had to decide whether to embrace the unknown or remain confined to the safety of their own world. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it was a journey they would take together, armed with the knowledge of the warship and the Firstborn's legacy, and the understanding that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. The warship had given them a fighting chance, but the future of humanity was still very much in their hands.